Okay, here we go. Welcome to week 5. You have to turn your... Wait, hold on. I can hear my voice through you.
Oh,
I wonder how that... That might be fine, though. Oh, wait, now it's fine.
okay.
Totally fine. I made that up. All right, week 5. Here we go. So this is we're writing our draft week, so it's the big writing week. I'm going to go over... First, I'll go over the discussion board, take a break, and then I will go over the main assignment, which is the actual rough draft.
Okay.
So, all right. So the to-do list has a couple things on it, right? Has the textbook, and you're going to need, again, for the discussion board to pick one of the, well, one or more of the little quick articles from pages 402 to 422. I think that's where the most are, but there's also a bunch on 337, so you can pick whichever you want. Those big have a lot of articles in them.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons about conclusions, writing conclusions, paragraphs, and then trying to just have a complete first draft done. So putting together the different elements. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll go over what the discussion post is supposed to be.
Like what is the technique is about?
Yeah, I have some examples of that too. So I can go through. Let me just make sure I downloaded. I did. And then we have quiz 5, which is about conclusions and making strong arguments. So here's the deal. Okay, so we'll start with discussion for week 5. So the idea is you're trying to quote a passage that is using a certain type of argumentative technique. So let me find, this means the person is using something to help persuade the reader. A very obvious one, like a very easy one to pick out, is when somebody uses counter argument. That's a strategy, right? So one of the strategies, so they can be any of these things, right? You have the way somebody uses logic, the way you can also do the tone of voice. Like maybe some of them do use a very sort of aggressive or smart or clever tone of voice. A transition from one thing to another. Then this is the one I was talking about, the way an author discusses, so concedes and refutes an opposing viewpoint, how they make their voice come through. That usually means like you can really get a sense of who's actually talking, of the person. It's kind of more informal, which is what those are a lot. So here's one of my examples. I just pulled it from one of the articles. Okay, so in a nationwide survey conducted in 2001, this is all about nearly half of the 20-somethings agreed that you would only marry someone if you lived together first. So you could find out you could really get along. And 2/3 said they believed in moving in together before they got married. But that belief is contradicted by experience. This is still in the same article. So now she's going to contradict that. So she's saying this is, a statistic about how most people thought it was important to live together before you got married. And then she's going to sort of refute it and support her own, which is that people probably shouldn't, I guess. Right? So she says, but that belief is contradicted by experience. Couples who cohabitate before marriage tend to be less satisfied with their marriages, more likely to divorce than couples who do not. These negative outcomes are called the cohabitation effect. So what I would do in my discussion is I would basically copy and paste these two parts of it, and then I would talk about the effectiveness of using counter argument, bringing up the other side, and then sort of refuting it. So that's one of the techniques that you can look for.
So let me hold on. So the first part is exactly took it from the article, from the book.
Yes.
I mean the first paragraph, right?
The first and the second, because they're both in there. So you're trying to find examples where they where they're using some sort of technique that helps their argument, right? So they're using a certain
from
thing.
here, like you said, in a national wide survey, it's also from the article.
Yep, the first two things are. These are. So I just
And
copied
then
and paste. I copied and pasted this. I actually would probably cite it for real. I don't remember the author's name, but I'll put it here. And then the second paragraph is also from there. I just copied and pasted it.
Yeah.
So that's the first part of the.
And from what that belief, it's my opinion about these two.
Well,
Like
yeah,
counter.
you need to, it needs to be a strategy. So it's a way of arguing. And what you're going to, what you're commenting on is why it is a successful way to argue. So you only want to pick something if you can be like, oh, that was cool how they did that. So this person, set up this idea and then she sort of shoots it down. And so, she successfully does that. And that's a good technique to be able to do. So here's the next part of the sentence. So first is just quoting, finding it, and then quoting it. And then the second is you have to describe it and explain the quote and what kind of technique it is.
So in this example, what kind of technique it use?
Right. This one would be something so this is the, I would do it down here. So the first thing I do is I quote these two paragraphs, two passages. The second thing I do is I describe what the technique is. So for this one, it's the technique of using the counter argument, where you bring up the other side and then you sort of argue against that side. So she says a lot of people believe, basically she's saying a lot of people believe that it's good to live together before you get married. And then she goes on to say, but that's actually contradicted by actual experience, is what she's saying, whether we believe it or not. But that's a technique. So that's the second thing. So that's what I would explain what it means, right? I would say, okay, so she quotes, or she refers to a survey about how most people think that they should live together before they get married because they want to know if they should get along. And then she says that's not actually true because people are more likely to end up in divorce if they live together first or something. So you're explaining it basically. So that's the second part of it. All right. Okay, this is an interesting thing. So the third part of it now is you need to explain how you plan to use this technique in your own writing. So in your actual essay, right? So you're trying to come up with, I plan to use this technique when I bring up this point, whatever the point is, and you explain it. So here it is. So how will you use it? And you want to be very specific. So it talks about exactly where in your essay, like you're going to use it, what section, how are you going to use it? Are you going to use it with a certain source?
This
So
is still about the article in the book, the third part.
no, the third part's now about your essay, right?
Oh, about like my previous, for example, the pregnancy women in
Yes,
poverty,
exactly.
right?
Right. So what
Okay.
you've done, the three things you've done is you've identified a technique in someone else's writing. You've explained the technique from their writing, and then you say, I'm going to use this technique in my own essay, and here's how I'm going to do it. So another one, so I didn't do too many, but I just cut the other one I copied.
For example, in my situation, can you give me an example about my topic?
Well, for yours, so yeah, well, it depends, right? But if you were to pick a counter argument, right, and so
Mhm.
you find it in the article, you talk about it in the article, and then you're going to say, I also use a counter argument. So you would need to focus on a place in your essay where you bring up the opposing side, and then you sort of shut down the opposing side.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and I can't remember. I thought we had some counter arguments. Did we think of those last time?
No.
No. But we came up. Do we come up with three supporting ideas for you? Where would I have typed all that?
Oh, three. Um,
I can't remember where I would have.
so in my case, I can use one of the opposing one of the opposing article regarding like pregnant women, and I can use the counter
Well,
argument.
well, not really, because here's what you're looking for. You need to find. Well, actually, you're going to say in your own writing, yes. So
Mhm,
you could say, the other side believes this, and you could use something from your other article,
mhm,
one of your opposing articles, and you could quote it, and then you could say, so in my essay, I'm going to quote this part, which is against my opinion, but then I'm going to show why they're wrong by doing something, by saying something else. Oh yeah, okay, I'm remembering yours a little bit. So like one of yours, I don't know, it's going to be too expensive to like set up these clinics to help prenatal women with their prenatal care. And
but I'm on the but I'm not on the opposing side part because I believe they have to, I
that
mean,
they
provide
should.
the free healthcare.
Yeah. So, but what you would say, that's the thing. So you would say, so your technique, I mean, if you use the opposing, that if you use the counter argument technique that we were looking at,
Mhm,
what you're going to do in your essay is bring up the other side and say,
mhm,
some people say it's too expensive and it's not worth it. And then you will say, but that's not really correct because of some reason. Like, you know, people, if people don't do preventative health care, they end up just going to the emergency room when it's way too late and it costs everybody way more money than it would
mhm.
if we like just, help them have vitamins or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's one example of this using,
Or like the childbirth like difficulties, or like the child would have like a lot of problem because of the I mean not have a good pregnancy.
right, and not having
Yeah.
the prenatal, right? They could have serious disease or
Mhm.
problems after, right? And this
Right.
would this would help solve that. So that's all you're going to say is that's how you're going to use it. And obviously, we're also writing the essay this week, so then you would sort of put that in your essay and say,
Mhm.
some people are going to say. So it's good if you can find research to back. Like it would be great if you could find someone who says it's too expensive and not worth it. So you could quote them and then talk about
Mhm.
why they're wrong. And it'd also be good if you had research that explained why it was worth it. So it's all about sort of using the research that you have and just putting it in the right places in your essay. And then, so counter arguments, one technique. I picked another technique is like when they compare things, sometimes in articles, they will compare one thing to another thing. And that can be an effective argument technique. So I could point out to a place where they said, this person is comparing living together before you get married, like signing up for a credit card with 0% interest. And then at the end of 12 months, when the interest goes up, you feel stuck because your balance too high to pay off or something. So she's trying to just make this connection that living together is sort of like the same idea. Like it's great at the beginning, and then after a while you get stuck and you can't get out of it or something. So anyway, I could point to this. I would copy and paste this. I would say I would explain the technique, right? I would say,
But this is about our own essay, not about the article.
this is just another possible thing someone could do, right? So you could point out a counter argument, which is what we just did, or you could point out some other technique. And other techniques are, for example, when a writer compares the situation to something else, that's a good way you can say that's a technique that works. Quoting, like I like the way the person quotes from real people who have real experience. That's another argument technique. But in any event, so that's the whole thing. You find one strategy, argument technique is what they're calling it, I guess. So one argument technique, you copy paste it in to the discussion post. You explain what it is and how it works, and then you explain how you're going to use the same technique in your essay. Does that make sense?
Yes.